Good morning. Today we're going to show you how to harvest your Flow Hive tea. So I'm just looking in the windows of this hive to see what's going on and whether it's actually ready to harvest. So if you have a look in this window, there's a bit of a variation of things going on. You can see frames that are very full like this with honey extending all the way out to the edges, and you can see they've put their wax capping because the cells are quite full. They've even gotten quite carried away in this hive and they're starting to put wax in the viewing areas here. This frame here we've harvested about 4 days ago, and you can see it's quite empty, although they're just starting to fill up a few cells again. Over here you've got a different coloured honey, so that was harvested a couple of weeks ago, and it's been filled with a very fragrant flavour which I really love, which is just been filling our frames at the moment. So you've got this arrangement of different colours of honey and different stages depending on what you've done with your hive. If you come around to the side window, this gives you an idea of what's going in your hive, as well. There's a lot of new bees in this hive. They've really been breeding up quick. We did take a split from this hive already about 6 weeks ago, and they've built back up. And there's so many bees it's even hard to see. But seeing through the bees, you can see the wax cappings. And if you look at the front of the hive, you can see we could actually do another split, or we risk this hive swarming. So best thing to do if your bees are looking like this is take a hive split, and then you get another hive. If you don't want one yourself, then somebody else will. It's always good to have a few hives because they perform very differently in your aviary. You can have one hive that's very productive and producing an incredible amount of honey, and another hive that really isn't. So I'd always recommend keeping a few hives. So the next thing to look at is your level. It's best to harvest with the hive on about a 3-degree slope, and we've got built-in levels on the side here to show you. Now, a 3-degree slope in the back and front direction is this little side. You want that level bubble sitting about in the middle of the level. Same at the back here. This is the side-to-side level direction, and that's for drawing natural comb, but also good if it's level for when you're harvesting your frames. So next thing to do is, what's different in the Flow Hive too is it's got a tray in the bottom. So depending on what you want to do, you can do nothing, and if you do get any little honey spills, they'll just go through and they won't end up on the ground, they'll end up in the tray. Or if you have the luxury of another tray, then you can put a clean one in so that you could actually capture any spills that might come through. So typically your tray will look like this over here. I just did pull that one out. So you can clean that and put it back in, or as said, you could just leave it as is, and a little bit of honey could end up on there and it's no big problem. Okay, so next thing to do is set up your shelf brackets for your right size jar. Now at the moment there's a few different heights. We have been harvesting with these tiny little jars here, and that's beautiful for a wedding or something like that, where you want a whole lot of taster jars, and that's the perfect height for that. But what we're going to do is set up for a big jar. There's a few different sizes. If you wanted this size jar, then you'd be the next screw down. So we tried to make this shelf nice and adjustable depending on what you want to do. So in order to actually click on your shelf to a different height, I've just got to find the little tool. There it is. Then it's about 2 turns out on the screw. So I've got this little nifty tool that comes with the Flow Hive too. Put it in here. You're coming out 1, 2, and the way to put it on is I find it best if I slot the screw up into that keyhole, in the top one, ignore the bottom one, like that, and then just twist it around. Now you can see that's a tiny bit loose, so what I'm going to do is just tighten that back up a little quarter of a turn there, and now when I twist it around, it's nice and sturdy. Okay. Now, next thing to do is grab your window cover, which doubles as your shelf, and insert it into position like this. Push it down, making sure it's sturdy, and your jar can sit right on top of it like that. Okay, so choosing a frame, we're going to choose a nice full one like this one here. Take out the key access cover up the top. Take out the cap. Now put them in a place where you'll remember them so you don't lose them. Now, a tube. So your Flow Hive comes with tubes as well. There's a little point here that inserts into the hive and unblocks a little leak back point, so you don't have to really think about it. And that's so when you put the cap back in, any remaining honey that's coming through will drain back into the hive, and it just clears that area for you without having to think about it. Next is there's 2 slots up the top here. So if you have a look there, what we're trying to do is lift that cross member, so put it in the bottom slot. Now it can be quite firm to turn the key, so it's often easy just to do it in segments. So if I insert it a little ways like that, simply turn it, then what's happened is the cells have now formed channels inside the comb, and the honey is already starting to flow down the tube. Now it happens to be quite an easy frame to turn, so you could do a frame like this in one movement if you wanted to, and I'll go and do that now. So if I insert this key all the way, I should be able to turn it without too much trouble, and the honey will then fill the jar. It does differ a lot. Some frames are really hard to turn depending on how your bees have waxed up the frames and how much propolis content is in their wax. You can see that honey now pouring into the jar, which is a beautiful thing to watch. I'm just going to taste that because that is a beautiful flavour. It's got the high floral notes of what's been flowering at the moment, and it's also got some of the deeper tones of what was flowering a couple of months ago. It's amazing. I would definitely recommend isolating your honey frame by frame, because then you get to enjoy all the flavours of your season by harvesting them into individual jars. And it's a lot of fun for me when people come over to share the love of honey with them and really share the love of all the different flavours. And to me, having the different flavours is a lot more exciting than mixing them all into one bucket. When I used to run a small commercial apiary, I would mix maybe 30 hives together in one extractor, and now I realise that frame by frame is the way to go. So it's just an absolutely beautiful flavour here today. I'm really happy to see that coming out. So if you've got questions, put them in the comments below, and we'll answer them while we're on this call. As usual, we're here to answer your questions each week and to show you something interesting about flow hives and bees and looking after bees. So we're here to help you get started in your beekeeping, and so ask away. There's no such thing as a silly question.
Cedar, Amanda would like to know what you stained the wood of the hive with.
Okay, this stain here was a linseed oil. It's titled Anti-Mold Linseed, and it's from Bunnings here in Australia. And the advantages of it does have those anti-mold properties for this really humid, wet climate at times. Disadvantages are you have to do a number of coats because it's quite thin. I think if I had an option, it would be a thicker version of it, so that you didn't need to do so many coats. But you can just do one coat and then just coat it again with the bees inside the hive a little later down the track. So that's now filled almost half a jar. One other thing I should mention is if you plan to do a whole frame to a jar, then you want about a 2 litre jar, or just a little over a half gallon jar. Having said that, if you do leave it here for hours to get the last dribbles, then sometimes you can overflow your jar, but typically if you're around you can catch that. Most of the time they fill up to somewhere about here after about half an hour on a warm day, or a bit longer if it's if the hives and the honey's cooler. Any more questions?
Billy would like to know if bees come with the hive.
Bees don't come with the hive. The best idea to get bees is find a local bee breeder in your area and order a nucleus hive. So nucleus hive is 5 starter frames already going. It's got a queen, it's got the brood nest, it's got everything it needs. It is a little hive, but it's only this big. You simply get in your bee suit and transfer that starter hive into your brood box, let the bees build up, and then put your honey super on when the bees are ready. Now, there are a few other methods, and we've got videos of how to install your bees on our Flow Hive YouTube channel and on our Facebook page. So the other methods are you could take a split, which this hive needs a split. We've been doing a lot of splits recently. We've also got videos on how to do that. You might have a friend who's got a hive with lots of bees in it who it could even be helpful to take a split so the hive doesn't swarm. Now, you can also order a package which is just the bees only that have just basically been shaken off frames, and they can come in the mail. We do have videos on how to install packages as well. Another one is catch a swarm, and we've got plenty of videos on swarm catching too. It's a fun way to start, although a little more adventurous and potluck whether you're going to find a swarm.
Rick
Beautiful.
says his honey was coming out of the jar a lot slower, but was faster in January.
Okay. What speed the honey comes out really does depend on the viscosity of the honey, and what viscosity it is depends on a number of factors. Temperature is the main one, but you also get situations where you have honey that's either the moisture content's lower and it's runny, or just the properties of the honey, all the way through to even thixotropic honeys, which come out in jelly-like globules. So they can be even a lot slower. So there's quite a range when it comes to how fast your honey comes out. Obviously, you can sit back and in the shade and enjoy a drink while it's happening. So how long it comes out isn't really that much of an issue.
Matthew says he's seen Chinese copies of the Flow Hive on eBay. What do you think?
Okay, there's actually an article in the Sydney Morning Herald today about that. They're, from the very beginning, we've had people even setting up fake sites and taking people's money and never delivering anything, which is sad. We didn't invent that to have disappointed people in the world. And then from there we had people doing copies of our invention really quite quickly. Often the plastic would smell really quite bad, and I certainly wouldn't be putting my bees in it. But you will see knockoffs. Do look out for it. Let us know when you see them. We're the only company in the world with granted patents. So despite what they say, there is only one Flow Hive. The others are counterfeits. And help us by letting us know where they're turning up, if you would.
Stephen says your roof colours are blue or green. Mine are red. Is that okay?
It absolutely doesn't matter what the roof colour is. The darker it is, the warmer it will get, although wood is reasonably insulating, so I don't worry about that too much. If you had a metal roof, just a single layer of tin, and it was painted a dark colour, that probably wouldn't be a good idea. But bees don't really mind about the colour of their hives, so you can get crazy and paint amazing things on your hive, or you can leave it natural wood. The cedar does best, leaving it natural. If you have the Araucaria version, then I would recommend using an outdoor decking product or painting it like this one is, because that's the way to get a lasting finish. The cedar, you can get a lasting finish by using some oils. However, just raw tung oil will mould after time, so I'd recommend like this one's the anti-mould linseed.
Ryan would like to know what you plan to do with the honey.
Okay, well, we have a lot of hungry mouths here in the office. We have currently about 50 staff, so the honey disappears quite quickly around here. But otherwise, we do sell it locally as well. So you might find some Flow Hive honey in some shops if you're lucky.
Tiffany's asking, once you've turned the key to get the honey out, do you turn it back?
Okay, great question. So yes, here's the answer. So what you then do, and we could even do it now to complete how to harvest, you then turn it back 90 degrees, take the key out, insert it in the top slot, push it all the way in, and then turn it again. And what that's done is reset all of those pathways inside the comb into formed hexagons again. So now the bees can go through their process of chewing back that wax, reforming the cells. They coat everything in wax, they fill it then with nectar, they go through that long drying out the nectar process, turning it into honey, and the whole thing starts again. And that was quite a win to work all that out over a decade of inventing with my father, to work out what the bees would and wouldn't do, and what they loved and what they didn't. So yes, if you forget to turn your key back, then we've built a little fail-safe in. So I'm just going to lift that last cell. What happens is you try to put this cap in and you go, oh, it won't go in properly. And that reminds you that you need to reset that comb by putting this in the top and turning it. Now I would recommend leaving it there for 30 seconds or a minute, because wax has a property of moving quite slowly, and you want all the parts to move back into the fully formed position. But once you've done that, you can take that key out, put your cap in, and you're ready to go. Now I could either leave that and this jar will fill up, or I could get impatient, take this tube away, put that cap in, and the last remaining dribbles will go back into the hive for the bees to reuse. And that's that little leak back point I was talking about earlier. So that's how to harvest. If you've got more questions, keep putting them in the comments below and we'll keep answering.
Cedar, Bruce would like to know, does the Flow 2 still have the slats that make up the roof?
Okay, so it's talking about the roof shingles. Now the Western red cedar version, our Flow Hive 2, has 2 roof shingles, but they come pre-glued together for better weather protection. So they come as one piece to help stop any weather getting in those joins. So if you've got the earlier version, then make sure the Flow Hive Classic, then make sure you put some glue or paint right in that join to keep the weather out.
Jack would like to know, is there any cleaning required?
Okay. If the frames stay in your hive, then there really isn't a lot of cleaning that you need to do. The bees really do look after the frames. However, if you take the frames out and leave them around, then they can get a bit manky, vermin can get on them, then they may need a clean before you put them back in with some nice hot water or a pressure cleaner or something like that. So so if leaving the frames in is a great idea. Sometimes this trough area can get a bit manky if that leak back point. Have a look at this frame here. The bees have actually blocked it up. Now, if I pull out that cap, what you'll see is that they've blocked that little point there. Now, if it's been blocked for some time, that honey there could start to ferment a little bit. It hasn't on this frame yet, but if it was left there a long time, it would. Now you can clean that just by poking your key down that slot, and now any remaining honey will drain back into the hive and you won't get that problem. If it gets really dirty in there for some reason, or ants moved in, then you'll need to put some fabric on this key and some warm water and get in there and clean it. You can even put a hose into that area. So that's about it. Sometimes the tray, the Flow Hive 2 tray, if you have a look behind you there's a tray we pulled out earlier. Now that's a bit like the kitty litter for the hive. You can use it to trap beetles. You can see a few beetles in here, and but pollen falls through, and then the pollen goes a bit mouldy. So it's not a bad idea to clean that out periodically. And it also gives you a great idea of what's going on in your hive. You'll see tiny little wax flecks, and that's the sign of a lot of baby bees just testing out their wax glands. Yeah, but if you see like hive beetle larvae, then you might like to keep a real eye on your hive and start trapping beetles by putting oil in that tray, or whatever favourite method you've got of trapping small hive beetles. So that's about all it needs cleaning. We tried to design it so that it's as simple as possible and as maintenance free as possible. Okay, so I can take out this tube now. That it's slowed down to just a tiny little fine stream of honey. So I feel quite okay about that. Just putting this cap back in now quickly so that we don't spill honey. And there we have it, one big nice jar of honey. And it's a beautiful thing. So you get one of these per frame if the frames are full. I'd recommend harvesting maybe 1, 2 or 3 frames at a time, and just check that everything's working well, you're not getting any issues, and that's just a beautiful way to harvest. That's enough honey for breakfast. Thanks for watching.